Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. Now recently I've been thinking about, I suppose, the future of Sudoku, and particularly in light of the Fog of War puzzles, which you might have seen on the channel. But I am assured that this one is a new type of Sudoku that could create its whole, a whole new genre on its own. It's called Marble Run, and it's by ZergreS. Now, I know the name ZergreS because ZergreS has done some amazing riddle Sudokus where he embedded classic riddles into a normal or a seemingly normal Sudoku puzzle. And they've featured on the channel a few times. I've absolutely loved those. But in this puzzle, we have to get the marble to run down the grid, only going downwards and sideways, and end up in the chute at the bottom. And I love the idea of this. And in fact, one of the things that I think could be so amazing, I don't know if it's possible to do it from a software perspective, but imagine if having got the path, we could like click a button and the marble actually ran down the grid and made like nice noises as it moved from level to level. That would fill me with joy. Anyway, I'll read you the rules of this in a moment. I think it's got a 100% rating on Logic Masters Germany, and we've had it requested and recommended to us in a few doses. So some people have tried this and not actually managed to solve it, although I did notice it's only got 3 stars out of 5 for difficulty, so hopefully it's not too bad. We'll see. Now, what do I have to tell you about today? A couple of things. Our Kickstarter, we've got only 9 days to go. I've got a new graphic for you for this. This is the Kickstarter to make Cracking the Cryptic's Greatest Hits Volume 2. It's going to be absolutely magnificent, and if you want to grab a copy, travel over to the Kickstarter. I'll try and remember to put a link on the screen. I know Peter, who's running the sort of administration of the Kickstarter for us, has been looking at making cushions as well. Look at this, an O'Bobbins cushion. So I don't know if these are available yet, but have a look at that. I think there's a Miracle Sudoku cushion as well to have a look at. Other than that, what else do I need to mention? We've got the gas pack available in various app stores. Android app store. What's the Android store called? Is it just called Android? Probably isn't. I don't know what it's called, but it's available over there. And also, of course, on Steam for PC, you can get the genuinely approachable Sudoku puzzles, which are rather cool. Other than that, we've got more of you who've solved, let me show you the picture, this one, the 12 Labours of Hercules over on Patreon. So very well done today to James Barrett, Ed Caird, Mark Richardson, Ton Van Namen, David Clare, Jarko Pajuniemi, I think. Pajuniemi, I might be right with that. Yeah, Pablo Martin Villeras, Jan Lim, Andrew Nicholson, Ferdinand Stam, Luke Bovard, Daniel Sloan, Marcus Zockel, and congratulations on your son's baptism back on November the 5th, Marcus. Amir, this is a complicated name. Amir Jamshid Nakai, I think. And Jorg Volketsetter. So I'm sorry if I've mispronounced anyone's name, but all of you have done incredibly well to get through all 12 puzzles. Brilliant, brilliant work. And then finally some birthdays. 2 birthdays today. David, you've turned 66, I believe. And I know this because your wife Tammy wrote us a lovely email in which she described you as the best husband in the world, no less. So very well done on that, David. And congratulations on your birthday. And then also to Manya, I think that's how you might pronounce your name, Manya. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. You've turned 15, and I know this because your friend David wrote to us and said that you like a shout out. So I hope you get lots of cake. That's much more important than a shout out. And the only other thing to mention is today we released a bonus video. I did battle with the Times crossword, this is the hardest Times crossword for months according to the statistics, and I gave it a go. And you can watch my live solve of that on the channel. I'll try and remember to put a link to that on the screen as well. It's a fantastic puzzle, but my goodness, it's not easy. I'm hoping Marble Run will be easier. Let's see. These are the rules. Normal Sudoku rules apply. Find the path of the Marble Run from row 1, column 1, that's the marble, to the hole in row 9, column 1, that's the hole. The marble can only drop down or go sideways. So what we can't do is make the marble do this sort of thing. That's not allowed because the marble would have risen and defied gravity along its trip, and it mustn't do that. It cannot visit a cell more than once. Okay, so we can't make our marble oscillate. And digits in cages sum to the given total. Okay, cells on the marble's path do not contribute to the sum. Good grief. Right, so let's draw a marble in that's doing some marbling going down the grid. We'll make that grey. Now, well, this is instantly wrong, I can see that, but I think the point is, let's look at this 10 cage. These two cells, whatever's in them, would not contribute to the 10 sum that we've got here. So those 3 digits would add up to 10. These 3 cells would add up to 24. These 6 cells would add up to 15. There's something wrong with that, assuming digits can't repeat within a cage. And yes, the final part of the instruction says no digits can repeat in a cage. So this is not working. You can see this 5 cage is absolutely broken because actually none of its cells can contribute to its count of 5. This 7 cage, that could work if these cells could be 1, 2 and 4 adding up to 7, and then that could be anything. Oh, the 15 cage is broken as well. So don't draw this marble run. This is not right, but that gives us an idea of how the puzzle actually works. Do have a go. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. But now I get to play. Let's get cracking. It feels incredibly dark actually in my room. Gosh, the winter's depressing. Now, I mean, I can see loads and loads of cages that must be affected by the marble. All these cages are they're jarring in my brain, like a 23 cage. I mean, let's talk about the secret, I suppose. There is a secret about Sudoku. Now, I will tell you what it is, but don't tell your friends. The secret is that any complete box of a Sudoku, because it contains the digits 1 to 9 once each, sums to 45. That's what you get if you add 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9. Now this cage, we're being told, sums to 23. So there's an awful lot of marblage wending its way around this cage in order to equate, if in effect, the 23 to the 45. So you can see this 33 is wrong as well. That's got to have some marblage affecting it. I mean, this cage adds up to 3. Well, that's impossible because, well, I mean, it will be possible according to the rules, but obviously if this was a natural cage unaffected by marble, it would add up to at least 15 because the triangular number for 5 is 15. This cage has got to have an effect because the triangular number for 4 is 10. That cage is under the same pressure. This cross in the middle is ludicrously broken because, what's that, 7 cells, the triangular number for 7 is 28. The triangular, well, again, that's got to be affected. Triangular number for, so basically, you can see by triangular numbers that most of these cages are absolutely broken. That one, though, I noticed this when I was doing the introduction, that one cannot be affected by the marble. And that's because if we do run the marble through the 15 cage, for example, if the marble, how am I going to show what the marble does? Grey. Let's go down like that with the marble. If we did that, this cell would have to be a 15 number, so that's not going to be right. So actually, I'm going to make those cells green to indicate they are uninterrupted by the marble. So the marble has to join, well, it has to go along the top row for a little bit. Right, what does it do now? If it goes down into the 8, it's got to continue going down into the 5, because this cell would have to be an 8. We can't take both cells. Yes, maybe that's a way to think about this. We can't, because none of the cage totals is a 0, especially in the domino cages, we must be careful not to have the marble flowing through both of the caged cells, or the cells in the cage. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is wrong, isn't it? we've got 2 cages here that add up to 6. Now individually that's fine. I can make a 3-cell cage add up to 6 with 1, 2 and 3. But then the second cage is going to be very problematic. The minimum, another way to think about this is what's the minimum number that we can make 6 different numbers add up to in a Sudoku. Well, that's the triangular number for 6. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, which is 21. It is not 12. So this has to be interrupted. Now what that means... Yes, okay, so that means this doesn't drop into row 2 at this point. But because... It's a little bit hard for me to explain this, but because the marble has to affect those digits, if I was to drop down with my marble into row 2 here, I can no longer affect these digits at all because the marble isn't allowed to jump. But I can affect these, but only by coming along row 2. But in coming along row 2, I'm going to mean that the marble completely negates the 6 cage and completely negates the 8 cage, because it will travel through both of them. So that's not going to work. We've got to continue going along the top row, and I've got to still go along the top row. Again, if I drop down, I know I'm going to completely cancel out the 6 cage. I still can't drop down because I'm still going to, if I drop down here, I'm still cancelling out the 6 cage. So I've got to get at least to here. Now I could drop down, probably. I haven't really thought about this, but if I do drop down, I've then got to go right. And affect, because I've got to negate some of these cells. But how do I get a handle on that? I don't actually, So I'm going to come down, I'm going to drop in here, I'm going to do some wiggling. How do we actually get a handle on what we do next? Let me think about this. Is there something... Right, okay. Maybe I attack the corners then. So that cell can't be marble, can it? Because if that's marble, the only way of getting to this cell is if this and this connect directly. And that's going to completely break this top 6 cage because none of its cells will be allowed to count in its sum. So that is green. Now this cell, if we go there and then drop down, then we're saying that would be a 6. But then I don't really know what we do then. I've got to, okay. That is a little bit interesting actually. If that cell's in, because I have to drop down here, I can't then take another cell in this 6 cage. Because if I did that, let me show you what would happen. If I, for example, came to that cell, then both of those cells would have the same number in them, because neither of them would have marble, and they each would have to add up to 6. And the same is true if I go that way, look. So in fact, if I do this, I have to drop down there. That might be a problem, but I can't immediately see why. That would be a problem if I have to go this way. Oh, and I do. Oh, good grief, right. Wow, this is really, it's very interesting, this. I'm just going to get rid of this for a moment, because I've noticed something about that cage. This is a 4-cell cage with a sum of 5. So how many marble cells must there be in this little tetromino here? And the answer is, I don't exactly know, but it's at least 2, because if the marble only, say, for example, came into this cell, and these 3 cells contributed towards the sum of 5, it would be broken, because 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. Now that is interesting, because that means that one of these cells, at least, in row 3 of this 5 cage, is a marble cell. And that means that my little experiment over here, when I drop down into row 3 at this point is invalid, because if I do that, for example, this cell has to join up to something there, so it's going to move horizontally to do that, and it's going to completely negate the 9 cage. So I don't think at this point it's now possible for this cell to be included in the marble run. I'm just going to double check that now, bearing in mind that we have to get over here. Let's just double check this. So if I do this, this is now a 6, so I can't leave one, so I have to do that. Yeah, it just doesn't work. That cell is definitely out. Okay, but we're not sure about this cell. So if this was a 1, 2, 3 triple, then I'd have to have one cell in this one left over to be exactly equal to 6. Right. How do we do this? Do we know? I haven't got a clue, actually. I really am struggling to see how to do this. So if I drop down here, then I know I've got to come over here, because that's forced. Oh, that doesn't work. Right, this is it. Right. Okay, this isn't easy to see again, but we've got to bear in mind we need to interfere with these 6 cells somehow. So if I was to drop down to row 2 at this point, I have to come right. But bear in mind all 3 of these cells now are counting in this 6 sum. So this is a 1, 2, 3 triple. So it's now not possible for us to drop down here, because these 2 cells would have to add up to 6 without using 1, 2 or 3, and that's impossible. So the only way this could now work, of course, is that we come across here and take that cell, and that's fine for this box because this can be a 6. But as the marble drops down here and it has to come over here, it's going to run along that row and obviate the 9 cage. So this doesn't work. So that is lovely for one reason only, which it means that we come across to here. Now if we come across to here, we must drop down. Then we have a decision to make. What do we do then? Well, we know what we do then. Well, we don't. No, we don't. We don't know what we do then. Well, one thing we do know is we do not visit this cell, because the moment we visit this cell, when we drop into row 3, which will have to be somewhere up here, we're going to run along row 3 and break this 9 cage. So this cell and this cell are both green. Now, has that resolved the world for us? He says, trying to work it out. I don't know. So basically the marble now. Let's use the line tool because it will be very satisfying to draw in. So the marble comes along here, drops down, and then it's either going to turn back this way. Yeah, and if it did that, actually, it would have to drop down, wouldn't it? Because otherwise the 6 cage would become broken. Or we drop down again. And if we drop down again, we know we've got to get over here. So then we'd have to come across here. That would make this cell have to be a 9. Now, but how do we actually work out which of those options is plausible or forced? What could we do? We could say that, what have we got as the count along row 2? Oh yeah, that's an interesting point. I've not seen that. Row 2 is completely full of cage. 14, 20, 35. Oh, that's it. Right, that's it. That's beautiful. Ah, right. And well, no, it is beautiful and it is forcing, and that's great. Okay, this row's cages sum to 35. Now we know that actually if there was no marble in row 2, that the actual digits in row 2 sum to 45. So the marble has to negate cells summing to 10. Well, I can't put 10 in there. So I've got to, if I drop straight down into row 3, I can never get back into row 2 because the marble isn't allowed to disobey gravity. So I must take another cell here, and that forces it, because I can't take this one as well, because the 6 gauge would then have a 0 clue. So I must drop down here, I must go across here, and that has done substantial work in the plotting of marbles. So that's grey, this is all grey. Right, that's a 6, just by the fact that it has to be a 6. So my 15 gauge here is a 7-8 pair, because it can't be 6-9 anymore. My 8 gauge is a 3-5 pair, because it can't be 1-7 or 2-6 anymore. And my 6 gauge here has 2 cells adding to 6, which are not 1-5. So that's 2-4, which means these 2 cells are 1 and 9 of all things. All of these cells are now green, aren't they? So those 2 are adding up to 9, and they're not 2-7 or 4-5. So this is either 3-6 or 1-8. And these 2 cells are adding. Oh, these 2 cells are adding up to 6, and they're not 2-4. So that's 1-5. Aha! So that's a 9, and we've got 2 digits in the grid, 3 digits in the grid. This is not 1-8 anymore. So these 2 squares are 8 and something. 7. Okay, 8 and 7. Oh, whoa. Okay, well, there's all sorts of things going on now. Because this 10 gauge is now in trouble. It's got a massive digit in it. So at least 2 of these 4 cells have to be marbled now. I want to say that means this cell is green, because the marble is currently travelling west in this direction, and it's going to drop down at some point over to the left, over to the west of this 10 pentomino. Now when it drops down into this row 4, we know it must travel this way. It must travel east, because it must intercept some of these cells. And it could intercept 3 of them, but it must intercept 2 of them. And that's because even if that's a 7, and this was, say, a 1-2 pair, that would be 10, but these 2 would have to be negated to make that work. Yes, so as it comes along here, these 2 cells at least are forced to be marble, and this one is forced to be not marble. Right, and oh, this is lovely. This is really, well, it's straightforward at least. If wherever the marble drops down along here, these 2 cells must be on the marble run, because they must be. So those are all grey. Oh, right. This is so cool. I can see why this puzzle's loved. It's just, the logic in it is so weird and wonderful. Look at this now. Now this 7 gauge needs to be interfered with, because you can't make 4 cells add up to 7. Now how does it get interfered with? Well, if this dropped down here, it never gets touched because the marble obeys gravity. So we've got to continue this along here, and the moment we continue that along there, we have to continue this along here. Now at this point we can pause and say, okay, well, everything's going nicely. What would happen if we go one more cell with the marble this way? Well, the 5 gauge would break, so that's not allowed. So that's got to be green, and that forces the marble to drop, and that finishes all of this as green, all of these as grey. That is a 5 by the process of having to this gauge having to add up to 5. Those must be a 1, 2, 4 triple to add up to 7. That 5 gives me a 3 here by sudoku, so that's a 5. What does that mean? That means that... I don't know, actually. I'm not actually spotting what that means. Bobbins. Okay. In row 4... Yes, okay. How could this come to here? How could that be 2 greens? The only way 3 digits can add up to 10 if one of them is a 7 or an 8 is if this is a 1-2 pair. And that's going to mean both of those cells have to be a 4, and that will break the rules of Sudoku. So we mustn't do that, which means this cell here is grey, which means the marble comes here, drops in here. This cell here is now a 2 or a 3 by maths. Okay, and now the 24 is forced because it's not. If the marble takes any more cells of the 24, we'd have to make 2 cells add up to 24. That won't work. So the marble must turn. These 3 cells, whoopsie, these 3 cells have to be green. These 2 are grey. I'm having fun with this. This is all forced again. The 12 cage needs to have proper digits. It needs to at least 2 digits to make 12. So those 2 have got to be the 2 real digits. These have got to be grey. Our marble wends its way to the middle of the grid. These cells have got to be 7, 8, 9. That's the only way of making 3 cells add up to 24. There's a 7, 8, 9 triple in column 9. The 9 of which is down here. So that's not 9. In fact, those 2 digits are the same, aren't they? So there's a virtual 7, 8, 8, 9 triple now in row 6 because one of these squares must be a high number, must be a 7, 8 or 9 because 12 in 2 cells is either 5, 7, 4, 8 or 3, 9. Now, okay, so what do we do? What do we do now? We've got to decide how we're going to make the marble move from where it is at the moment. And I've got no digits in my 15 cross that actually count towards the total of 15. Okay. The marble is here, and wherever it goes next... Oh, right, this is it. It's simple. It's simple and beautiful. Okay, what I noticed first is that in this cross, I've got to put some cells that add to 15, some green cells. Now, this marble, its next move is either here or here. And that's only going to leave 2 white cells that could turn green left over. So let's imagine the marble did continue to here. Well, now to make 15, these 2 cells have to add up to 15. But this cell has no possible value that can be useful here. Because it can't be 6, we know it can't be 7, 8 or 9. So the maximum value of this cell is a 5, and I can't make 2 cells add up to 15 if one of them's a 5. The other will have to be a 10. So the marble actually must duck down, and then it can't continue going down, because if it did, there's only 1 cell in the 15 cage that adds up to 15. So the marble turns, and now we can do that's green, these 2 are grey. Oh, I see. Right, and now this 9 cage needs interfering with, because it can't make 4 different digits add up to 9. So the marble has to come along here and hit that cell at least. And that's beautiful, because now with those 2 cells being grey, this cell here must be a 9, it must be green, these 2 cells must both be green because the marble can't disobey gravity, that's not a 9, so this is a 9 by Sudoku, 9 lives in one of those cells. There might be something we can do here. We might be able to get these two digits now. We know they add up to 15, so they're from 6s, 7s, 8s and 9s. That's not 9, and that's not 6, and unfortunately that eliminates the same sort of 6, 9 option from both of those cells. Okay. What do I do now? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. What do we do now? We can argue that. Oh, I'll tell you something simple. This, that domino adds up to 12, but that digit can't be a high digit because it can't be 7, 8 or 9. So that digit's a 7, 8 or a 9, and it's not 9, and that digit is therefore 4 or 5, which doesn't seem to do anything at all. In box 4 now, that cell's got to be a 7 or an 8, because I've got a 7, 8 pair, and I can't make those two squares 7 and 8 because they're both counting in my 9 sum, and obviously 7 and 8 add up to 15, so that's got to be a 7 or an 8. These two squares have got to include the 7 or the 8 that's not there. That's got to go in here, so this is a 7 or an 8 and a 1 or a 2. Wow, that is beautiful. Okay, well I know what this digit is not. This is lovely. This whole puzzle is lovely. Right, what's this digit not? Well, the answer is it's not 1 or 2. Because if it's 1 or 2, it completely knocks that digit out of the 7 cage. If that's a 2, none of those digits can be a 2. So that digit's the high digit, which means that digit is the low digit. Now this digit can't repeat in those two cells, so it's the same as that digit, so these two digits are the same. We might have some colouring opportunity. Oh, 7, 8 pair here, that's a 6. We might have some colouring opportunities in a minute. Sort of these 7s and 8s all dotted around the place. There's another one up. Oh, there are loads of them actually. These 3 squares are now known. They are 3, 5 and 6 by Sudoku. That's not 3. That's not 5. This square, this square's now a 4 because it can't be a 5. That means that square's an 8 by mathematics. This square's a 7 by mathematics. Well, by elimination actually. That's an 8. That's a 7. So that's an 8. Oh, this 8 means that's a 7. So that's a 2. Yes, and not only that, of course this cell could never be in the sum. Once you get 8 and 7 up here, we could have just said that's got to be negated for the purposes of the marble, because it does, because you can't make it, you can't put 0 in it. So that means that's got to be grey, which means the marble continues and drops down, which means I get another grey cell here. Now, what can we do with that? These are not 2, so this is now 2. This, okay. What are these two digits? They are 1 and 2. It's actually getting a little bit hard for me to see the pencil marks behind the marble run, but I don't really want to take the marble run out. What's going on now? Oh, that's 6, so that's 9 by maths. Remember, those two had to add up to 15. There's got to be a 9 up here by Sudoku of all things. So that means there's a 9 in one of those two cells, which is potentially interesting. It doesn't. Yes, and I've got to ignore whatever's in the grey cells doesn't count or contribute towards the cage totals. That's digits of 3 because it's 7 plus 3 is equal to 10. Sorry, that's been sitting there for ages, hasn't it? Doesn't do anything, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But it was there and available. That's an 8 by elimination. This 7. Oh, this 7 and this 8 go into the grid. So there's an 8 down here. There's a 7 down here. And for our next trick, we might have to think about the marble again. I tell you something that's strange though. This doesn't feel to me like it's going to resolve. It's hard to believe this marble operating in the bottom of the grid, where there don't seem to be many cages, is actually going to disambiguate everything above it, which it definitely needs to do. Now, I've probably missed some sudoku. I know that's what you're all telling me. Okay, let's think about this. So what is it we're doing? We know the marble comes into box 9. We know the marble... Oh, hang on. The marble has to... Yeah, the marble has to get rid of a lot of cells in this U pentomino. It's got to get rid of at least 3. I could leave behind a green 1-2 pair in the U pentomino. But the marble, this being green is problematic, isn't it? Well, okay, yeah, that being... Oh, I see. No, it's simple. Oh, it's beautiful as well. Right, that cell now cannot be on the marble path because the marble would have to jump to get there, and that must be... Logic just propagates along the row. So all of these are not marble. Oh, okay. So now remember that we said that the marble needs to visit box 9. So that means the marble's got to come along there, and then it's going to wiggle around, and then it's got to come out again. And once it comes out again into the bottom row, how does it get there? Well, the answer is it must just travel along the bottom row. So all of those cells, I think, have to be grey. These are definitely grey. So, okay, and then how does the marble get to this cell, which was the cell that allowed it to enter box 9? I think there's probably a very simple way of doing these puzzles. I'm finding my way here. So this comes here, and that does now mean this cell is not a 6. Because it's green, so the maximum value of this cell is 3. Could be a 3 if that one is marble. It's not a 1 actually. Is it? Okay. Right. Right, I can see that the marble doesn't drop here. In box 7, because if it does, the only way the marble can get here is to do that, and now I've only got 2 green cells in box 7 that have to add up to 23, and that's impossible. So the marble, let me just try and correct this. The marble must do that, and this cell must be green. And in fact that works again, doesn't it? If the marble drops here and turns, there are still only 2 green cells. So the marble has to go across there. And it's still right. So okay, I could have seen that much more clearly, and I just failed to. But there's only one way the marble can travel from here to this box and leave behind 3 green squares. Now these 3 green squares add up to 23, so they've got to be 6, 8 and 9, and the 8 seems to only have one position, which means that's the 9 and that's the 6. Wow. Wow. So which means that's a 9 by pencil mark elimination. That's... Oh, this is not a 6, so that's a 6. Wow. Okay, so there's a 6 up here now. This is a 3, because it's the only marble square. Or it's the only non-marble square in this 3 cage. This is a 9 by sudoku. This is a 5 by sudoku. I don't think that tells me anything very clever, does it? It's still surprising to me, actually, that this is going to resolve at this point. Let's think about this. What is it in what we've done? Because it's about to become a sudoku puzzle and not a marble puzzle, and that will be a great pity. But it is about to do that, I think. What's going on in this box? We need the green cells in this box to add up to 33. Now, does that mean if I close this off, by the secret, these two cells would add up to 12, which is almost impossible. They'd have to be a 5-7 pair because they couldn't be 4-8 or 3-9. So if it closes here, this is a 5-7 pair. I can't immediately see why that doesn't work. If it doesn't close here, it's got to take a yes, okay. Okay, so we're into binary land, aren't we? It's either closing or it's doing that. There's no possibility for it to do that, because that would imply that those three cells are adding up to 33. Now, if it does that, we're not allowed to include 9. What's 8, 7, 6, 5 and 4 adding up to? Not 33. That does not work. Yeah, so this is wrong. Because if we can't use the 9 in these green cells, the maximum... Oh, in fact, look. Okay, another way of thinking about this is what if we did this, what would these 3 digits be? And the answer is not 9, not 8, and not 7. So the absolute maximum value of those cells would be 15 if they were 6, 5, and 4. But if they were 15, these two cells would have to add up to 18, and that's impossible in 2 digits. Even if you could, well, it's just impossible. There is no way to do it. So now we've proved that, which is great, because we know that's a 5-7 pair. Doesn't actually seem to do anything in the column, but we know that's true. We know all of these are green, and we've done our marble. We've done the marble. So the marble... Now, I don't know if any of you are brilliant programmers or something and can make the graphic work, but imagine if I could press a button and this went... Zzz, and it's got to make a lovely clinking sound when it falls from one level to the next. And then when it gets to the chute at the end, I don't know what it does, but it's got to be another sound effect. Oh, that would be so cool. Now, anyway, don't get distracted. What is it we're meant... So this is now Sudoku. That does not seem right. That does not seem right. Whoa. Whoa. Okay, well maybe this column is where I'm going to start. 1, 2, 3, and 6. Yeah, well, okay. Where's 3 in this column is the simple question. It's got to be there. So now we're down to 1, 2, and 6. Right, that's a naked single. It sees 2 and 6 in the row, so that's 1. So this is a 2-6 pair. These... Oh, no, they're not. Where does 6 go in this box now? It's got to go here. So that's 6, that's 2. Okay, so that's 6 now I can see by Sudoku using this 6 up here. So maybe this will somehow resolve itself. I will be surprised. Yes, okay, where does 2 go in column 9? It can't go at the bottom because of this 2. So it's got to go there. Well, I'll ask the same question of 5. Where does 5 go in column 9? There's a 5-7 pair, so it goes at the top. So it is going to resolve. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised by that, but I sort of am a bit surprised. These squares have got to be 3 and 8, which is resolved, of course. 8 and 3. These squares are a 1-4 pair. Now, we can put 2. There are 4 2. Well, there are in effect... There's got to be a 2 here in box 7, which makes this a 7. 1, 4, and 5. Right, so 5 is only in one position in row 7. So these are a 1-4 pair. That seems to give me a 1-4 pair in this column. So this square is 3 or 6 and can't be 6. So that's 3, that's 6, that's 3. This is 1 or 4 in the corner, which means this... oh, I thought it was going to be a 3, but it's not. It's a 6. Never mind, doesn't get a song. These two squares are 1 and 4, which is resolved. So those squares are 2, 3, and 7. And that's very much not resolved, but at least we know what they are. These squares are 4, 8, and 9. Which is, well, at least we can eliminate a couple of things there. That's not 8, that's not 9. These squares, oh, maybe these squares, that's more sensible. 3 and 4. Yes, so that's 3, that's 4, that's 9. That's 3 in the top row. It's the only place 3 can go. 2, 7 pair, 4, 8 pair. Right, let's try the bottom row maybe. 5s, 7s and 8s to place. Oh, that was a terrible choice. That doesn't work. That can't be 5. Oh, right, we're going to have to look at these, aren't we? In fact, how is this final... How is everything getting resolved over here? I think I've missed something very simple because it feels like it ought to have cracked at this stage. This is 5, 7 and 9, isn't it? Right, so 9 can only go there. This is a 5, 7 pair. And it's going to be a matter of looking maybe down here. That's got to be 2, 5 or 7. Oh, I know what it is. I was wondering how I was ever going to resolve this, but I've just spotted what it is. I can't repeat a digit in this great big cross thing, and there's a 4 there. So that can't also be a 4, so that's 8. Ah, okay, well that makes me feel slightly better about the world. Yes, that gets me a 1 here, a 4 here. That will be a 1, that'll be a 1, that'll be a 4. That's a 1 now, that's a 2. So now this, where do we put 8 in this column? It can only go at the bottom. That's got to be 7 by sudoku. That's 5 by sudoku. That does the 5 and the 7. That gets me a 2 here. 2 and 7 at the top. 7 and 5 in box 5. Don't know what this is. Probably a 4. That gets me 4 and 1. And that, I think, is the correct solution. What a puzzle. That's just brilliant, isn't it? Start to finish. Original, interesting, comical sometimes, thinking about how the marble was going to run, and the opportunity for further memes to be generated as a result of creating a sort of an actual marble thing going down the grid. I really hope someone does that. That would be so... I would love it. Anyway, I will tweet about it. You have that. You have my guarantee. The best one will get tweeted about and featured in tomorrow's video. Yeah, loved it. ZergreS, take a bow. I think you've invented something very, very special there, and I really hope we see this kind of thing again because it's just really original and entertaining. Loved it. Let me know in the comments how you got on with it. I do enjoy the comments, especially when they're kind. And we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.